Okay. Good evening. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on the internet. For some of you, Easter is over. But for most of you, it is still Easter. And I'm going to ask a rhetorical question of everybody. How much of today did you spend embodying Friday? In other words, how many of you were actively or quietly engaged in crucifixion processes? Either crucifying yourself or crucifying someone else. How many of you didn't move into Resurrection Day today? Your own or the support of another's? Just tuck that question away. Would anyone like to wish me a happy Easter? Thank you. It was a day of joy, and it is a day of joy. To sort of tie the whole thing up in a simple nutshell, my birth was the first time that the divine idea of God was successfully introduced into the human condition. Oh yes, you had seers and prophets. You had those who believed in God. But no one was yet willing to be what could be called God with us, meaning with everyone in the human condition. You might say no one up to that point had been willing to step up to the plate and embody God rather than the human ego concept of existence. That made what you call Christmas a significant date, an event that was of universal significance. Because now there was someone stepping up to the plate who wasn't going to embrace and continue all the concepts of human existence which God was left out of, other than the simple act of observing and honoring His presence out there somewhere. And then, of course, you all have various records of my life as I grew up, and the things I did and the things I didn't do. I had plenty of opportunity to be distracted, just like every single one of you has. And the only benefit I had that you don't have is that I was never allowed to forget my source. my divine source, a source beyond the human condition, a source beyond mere copulation and the development of an embryo through what everyone else would call the normal processes. My mother was, as I've said before, an excellent Jewish mother, and she did not let me forget. When I was tempted to, quote, be like everyone else, join the crowd, you don't have a remembrance at the moment, which is why we get together to talk about remembering. And for me to provide you with imagery and ideas that help you to remember, that inspire ahas, little light bulbs going on. Even if it's just simply, wow, maybe that's true. Maybe what he's saying is true. I don't see it, but maybe it's true. That's a little crack in your defenses, in your assuredness that you understand what you are and what everything else is. It creates a weakness in the shell, so to speak, in the ego structures. It helps you to imagine that there's a box, that there's an outside to, that you're caught inside of, you see. Something that wouldn't occur to you spontaneously. Now, we come to Easter, what you have come to call Easter. You have had in my life up to that point a record of my remembering who I was and not abandoning it in favor of the status quo. And my willingness to embody God. And to inspire in others an awareness that God is their source. And that all the things that I was doing, they could do also. That what was natural to me was natural to them. But I will tell you, they were still very caught up in their already existing definitions and concepts about themselves. They still saw themselves as matter bodies. They had difficulty grasping that they were ideas in the mind of God. That the infinite mind that God is was their source, and that everything about them was spirit, not matter. And so part of the success, if you want to put it this way, of my being present in that day was to provide them what you would call physical proof that the physical is spirit. Else they would not have had the evidence needed to help them break the habit, skip the tracks of their habit of how they thought about themselves, and to see themselves from outside the box. The crucifixion was nothing. I mean, they all understood crucifixions. They called for crucifixions. They watched crucifixions. They cheered when the one crucified died. It was a part of their the fiber of their community. That wasn't special. But the resurrection was. And what I want you all to be aware of is the significance in the fact that the resurrection was a resurrection of what? A physical body. What would be called a physical body. How is this significant? Because I'll tell you something. Matter cannot be resuscitated. Matter cannot be regenerated. Matter cannot be transfigured. Matter cannot be healed. It is generally accepted in the current belief system that when I resurrected, I was beyond the human condition. That everything about me was spirit, and yet there was my figure. Recognizable, except to Mary initially in the garden. This is important because I keep telling you that your body is the visibility and tangibility of your individuality, and your individuality is God-derived and is therefore eternal. That which renders it visible and tangible is equally eternal, is equally divine. And that's one of the things you have evidence of in the Easter story. The event commemorated by Easter. It demonstrated that what you call the body survives death. That which identifies you and renders you experienceable survives this element of existence that is seen only through or in the human condition. The experience of death, the event of death. It's only seen in the state of ignorance that you're in when you have forgotten what your source is, and therefore what you are. Another aspect of it that's important not to overlook is that this state, conceived to be beyond the human condition, is present right where the human condition seems to be going on. After the resurrection, there was no ball of light with an opening in it that was obviously otherworldly or different, that anyone who wanted to see me could enter into, and in this rare and refined environment see that I still existed. No. I was right in the same room. I could be touched. We could hug. I could be felt. You see, every moment you are confronted with reality and nothing else. Right here and right now. Right now, everything that you are experiencing is the kingdom of heaven. Experienced clearly or through a glass darkly. Through, you could say clearly or through the lens of the human condition. So my presence after the crucifixion and after the resurrection was a demonstration of the fact that all of you are in the middle of the kingdom of heaven, not recognizing it for what it is, but it's there just like I was there after the resurrection. In form. But the form wasn't matter. And the form had never been matter. Even before the crucifixion. And the form of everyone else and the form of everything else had never been matter. You see? So Easter provided the demonstration of the fact that life is eternal and unbroken, whole, without parts called before and after, inside and outside. Life is eternal. And this life that is eternal is demonstrated or made obvious or experienceable by form, which is pure spirit. Pure spirit that configures itself to perfectly identify God's idea called you or me. And that's what's going on right now, today, in every moment. Sort of gets you to think outside of the box, doesn't it? You know, I showed that the here and the hereafter are both here. The ultimate is the only thing going on. Now comes the really significant point. My life, that most of you are familiar with, is your life. When you read it, this is your life. It's the process of waking up and coming home. You're here for the same reason I was here. To not forget to embody God. To remember to let God be present in you, not along with you, but as you. And to come to a point where you desire not to have any other presence of mind right where you are than God's presence of mind. That is the only thing you really are. And to consciously neglect to continue to give expression to what you think you are and what you think everything else is, and how pleasant it makes things for you if you don't buck the system by seeing things a different way from the way everyone else is dreaming their life in the kingdom of heaven. You're here to remember what you are and to step up to the plate and let the God of you, let the Godness of you be what finds expression in your words, in your thoughts, and in your actions. You're never, ever going to get away from visibility and tangibility. In other words, what has been called form. What you are going to get away from is the way you've been defining form as matter, instead of spirit, which is purely and utterly divine and of God. if you were able to manage to get beyond form, you would have managed to get beyond creation. And I'll tell you, that is a void. That is an emptiness, if there ever could be such a thing. Creation, with a capital C, the movement of God, is absolutely experienceable. Experienceable in an infinitude of ever new form and expression. Oh, yeah? I guess you could say that the ascension proved that there was no form, because then I moved beyond form, into the formless. Some sort of blissful experience that everyone imagines. But I'm going to tell you something. The reason everyone imagines that beyond the human condition and beyond even the state of resurrection, there is some sort of formless bliss, the only reason you think that is because if it's true and you can get there, it will mean that you won't have to step up to the plate and embody the presence of God instead of the presence of your definition of yourself. It's a cop-out. I have never been bodiless. I have never, in other words, been unidentified or unidentifiable, and none of you will be either. The moment any of you becomes unidentifiable, God will have become unidentified. And that would mean that God would have to become less than God, and that is an impossibility. Everyone had better simply accept the fact that there isn't a formless bliss, and that right now, with all of the forms you're experiencing, you're in the middle of the kingdom of heaven, and every single thing you're experiencing is divine. And the substance of everything you're sitting on, or feeling, or moving, is spirit moving at the behest of mind. They are ideas moving at the direction of the mind that formed them. Yes, yeah. You say, well, you said, I go before you to prepare a place for you. Well, I was preparing a place for you while I was here. I was preparing you for a place while I was here. I was preparing you for the kingdom of heaven you were already in, that you didn't dream was within your grasp. I went before you, in time, we'll say. I went before you so that you might have the need to be the presence of God, since you couldn't pawn it off on me. My absence meant more, capital S, self-reliance would be called for. You would have to lean within. You would have to go to the place of excellence in you, the altar in you, and bring your devotion there, because that place of excellence in you is the Holy Spirit. which is nothing more than your right mind. Even now, you notice that I don't take responsibility for you. I point you always in the direction of becoming more alive to what you divinely are, and point you in the direction of taking hold of it. And practice leaning into it and listening so that what? You might be infilled with it. And so that it might overflow you and get extended to your brothers and sisters while you're still here. So that God gets clearly what? Embodied. Body, 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 body. Embodied. Here and now. So that the light that God is might illuminate your world, your definition of the world, and uncover to you that it is the kingdom of heaven, and that you are the Christ, that you are the son and daughter, the direct expression of God. There isn't another place to go. What? No way to get out of the human condition? Well, what is the human condition? Is it the world? Is it Israel? Is it Iraq? Is it China? Is it the U.S.? Now remember, the human condition isn't something you're in. The human condition is something you're looking at the kingdom of heaven through. The human condition is all of the concepts and definitions that you've either made up or received from elsewhere and adopted as your own, and it's the sieve, the filter, through which you interpret the experience of the kingdom of heaven. The human condition is better described as the human conditioning of what? Your mind. That causes you not to see clearly, but through a glass darkly. To see the kingdom of heaven with distortions that you are convicted about, you are convinced about, and that you are devoted to. No, there's no way to get out of the human condition that you're surrounded by, because there ain't no human condition you're surrounded by. There's a human conditioning of your mind with which you're coloring your experience of the kingdom of heaven. And how do you get out of that? You get out of that by reaching beyond it. Where to? Some spiritual realm? No. You turn within to the altar, the place of excellence in you, quietly. I'm going to say mindfully, not thinkingly, just mindfully. The presence of attention. And you desire to know of the Holy Spirit what the truth is. Or God, what the truth is. You turn to a point that never left you, because there's no way, no matter how differently you defined yourself, for you to not be the only thing you were created to be, or the only thing that the Father is being you as at this moment.